Well, happy Sunday, everybody, and happy Sunday view. I wanted to show you guys these trout lilies. Now, it's getting a little windy and rainy outside, so I might be just plucking a couple of leaves and doing the discussion inside today. But I wanted to make sure you could see what they looked like popping out of the ground. You notice that it's one leaf popping out. They usually only sprout one leaf until they're 7 years old, and once they reach 7, then they grow 2 leaves. And then when they're actually mature, they'll have a flower with them, and we're talking about the yellow trout lily today. There's a white trout lily, but the yellow trout lily obviously has a yellow flower. I pulled a leaf so that we could kind of be out of the rain while I reviewed some identifying factors of the leaves themselves. The first thing that's pretty obvious is the striation of colors on it. It's got this mottled brown, red, purple on it, and that's supposed to be reminiscent of a trout's skin and the color striations, hence the name trout lily. It's an elliptic type leaf, meaning that it's widest in the center and then it narrows on either end. It can also be sometimes called a lance-shaped leaf as well, which again just means that it's tapering to a point at each end. It's a waxy leaf. The back has that nice red vertical vein, and the stem actually is a nice rich red color as well. And as I showed you earlier, it pops up usually as one leaf. Eventually there will be 2 leaves on a plant though with a flower. So these trout lilies are what's called a spring ephemeral, and they're perennial, which means they come up every year and they only bloom or fruit in the spring, and they have a very short season. So they'll die actually before all of these trees start sprouting their leaves. And the reason being is, you see how wide open that canopy is? Well, without those leaves, all that sun can get down to these trout lilies. There's Woodrow, always my buddy. So all flowering plants, also known as angiosperms, can be separated into 2 categories, a monocot or a dicot. And that's just a way for botanists and naturalists and anybody to kind of identify some key features on these plants. The trout lily is a monocot because it has these long, narrow leaves with these parallel veins running up it. Monocots also tend to have multiples of 3 in their flower. So the trout lily, I know this isn't open yet, but the trout lily has 6 petals and 6 stamens in it. And they have a fibrous root system. Trout lilies actually have a very fibrous but also bulb root system. And so you can see how we have these big colonies, and that's because at one point there was a mother bulb that started branching off and growing the rest of these. Now, I said bulb because that's usually easier for people to kind of get a reference or a mental image of what the roots are, but what we have here is not actually a true bulb system. It's what's called a corm, which is fibrous roots that are kind of densely packed together, as well as stolons, and those are those root systems that lay just on top or underneath the soil that kind of spread out and create that vast colony. So just so you know, I say bulb, but what we really have is a corm. So we know trout lilies can produce vegetatively, meaning that corm spreads out and we have this huge colony of trout lilies out here. Now, another way that it can reproduce is through germination. That just takes a little longer, right? Because as I mentioned in the beginning, it takes 7 years for a trout lily to produce a second leaf like this. And then once it finally matures, it can produce flowers like this. But only when it has that flowering head can it produce that seed. What's really neat is that the trout lily is what's called a monoecious plant. And remember, that's different than the monocot and dicot. Monoecious means that it has both male and female reproductive organs, so it can pollinate itself. Hey everybody, sorry I had to come in. I don't know if you can see my fingers, but they freeze up anytime I'm out in cold weather. So I really couldn't last that long out in the rain. I knew this was going to happen halfway through, but just wanted to explain the change of scenery. So we were talking about the flowers of the yellow trout lily. So it's this beautiful, bright, 6-petaled flower. It's monoecious, so it has both male and female parts. The plant only produces 1 flower, so it's a solitary flower, and it's nodding, so it hangs down. It doesn't, sit upright. And eventually the ovary within that flower will turn into the seed capsule. And so that seed capsule will divide into 3 parts and then pop the seeds out when it's time for it to spread along. Now those seeds, you know, they don't have legs to get up and walk, so what's really neat is that there's a symbiotic relationship that trout lilies have with ants. And the trout lily seeds are this crescent shape, and they have this lipid-rich appendage on them, so this very fatty section to the seed that the ants will eat, and then the ants will carry that seed along and transplant it to other parts of the wood forest bed. But trout lilies are definitely beneficial to more than just ants, right? The flowers of the trout lily actually bring in a lot of pollinators, particularly bees and butterflies, so that's really nice. The corm, that root system, can get dug up and eaten by black bears. The leaves can sometimes be eaten by deer, but it's not like a staple in their diet by any means. Trout lilies are native to North America, particularly the Northeast and the Eastern coast. So they hang out both in America and Canada. And there's some indigenous use for trout lilies, but nothing really concrete that was like a huge benefit. They're an emetic, which means they can cause you to throw up, so you don't want to eat a lot of them. But the leaves are edible in small quantities, same with the root system. Every part of the plant is considered emetic, so you just need to be cautious when you're using it. Every part of the plant is considered emetic, so you just need to be cautious when you're using it. So the whole reason why I wanted to debut the trout lily is because even though I'm not going to use it medicinally or edibly, you can, right? And I really wanted to show you guys what is that little hope that first sign of spring. So if you're living on the East Coast of North America, go take a look. Go try and find some trout lilies near you, because it's a good indication that so many more things are on the way to bloom. As soon as these trout lilies go away, there's so many other colors and plants and things that are going to be sprouting everywhere. There's going to be mushroom season, so lots to look forward to just by this little leaf popping up.